Purple on purple on Saturday. I don't know what they call the TCU spring game, but I guess we're about to find out from Melissa Treebwasser. You can catch her on Dave Campbell's Texas football and Dave Campbell's college football. She's all over the place covering TCU and the Sacramento Kings, if you like the NBA as well. Melissa, good to see you. How's everything going?
Going well, other than the Sacramento Kings season ending a little bit prematurely for my liking. But you talk about purple on purple. I think I only cover teams that wear that shade. So it's been a pretty good gig for me, I guess.
So what is it officially? Is it the purple and white? Is the
It has been rebranded this year. It is now Frogapalooza.
okay?
So, in addition to the purple and white scrimmage, Frogapalooza is going to feature live music, special concession deals, an open market for TCU swag. It actually looks like a pretty cool event that might get slightly derailed by some bad weather, but people are excited about it. And I love that they're bringing some hype around the spring football game and kind of closing out this chapter of the 2024 football season with a bang.
Sounds like the transfer portal. Markapalooza? It could probably be the same
I
thing,
think
right?
there's something there for sure.
Well, speaking of which, I know you didn't want to see Dominic Williams say goodbye. He was all freshman, all American 2 seasons ago, all Big 12 this past season, one of the better defensive linemen in all of college football. And he has reached the transfer portal. And I'm counting up, Melissa, 20 new additions through the transfer portal, 14 lost. So when you size it all up, those are just the sheer numbers. What are the key additions and subtractions beyond Williams?
Well, I think that you always hate to lose good players to the transfer portal, but Dom Williams is a kid who has, outperformed his rating, and we know as these things tend to go, that means that he's had a lot of attention, and so it's felt inevitable. It's kind of a not will he or won't he, but when will he? As far as entering the portal, and so it didn't really come as that big of a surprise. He was getting a pretty nice chunk of change in NIL. TCU, of course, doesn't report those things, but was one of the more highly paid guys. And so it wasn't all that surprising that he did eventually leave. I know I'm very interested to see where he ends up. But, like my co-host on our Frogs Insider podcast, Jamie, and I talked about the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away. And so for every Dom Williams that heads out elsewhere, there's a great number of players that have contributed in huge roles over the last couple of years and will contribute in big roles this season that TCU has targeted in the transfer portal. So the biggest thing that we're going to see is just the way that they completely rebuilt the interior and exterior of the offensive line. That has been a big question mark. It was a big weakness and a huge part of TCU's struggles in 2023. So that is an area that they went heavy in the portal where I think we could see some really impactful players, a lot of depth with guys like Remington Strickland, who came over from A&M. Carson Bruno is a guy people are really excited about. They've been in on a couple of the big offensive lineman targets. Just lost a legacy player to I can't even remember where he signed, but I think maybe Oklahoma or something. And so that's been an area they've gone after hard, but they've also brought in some pretty nice impact players as well. The couple of defensive linemen that they got through the portal both this year and in previous years that can maybe help kind of take the sting off of losing a kid the caliber of Williams will help. But it's something that you've seen good players leave TCU in smaller numbers. You've seen TCU bring in a lot of starters. And so as frustrating as it can be, if you don't want to feel like a farm system for, the Big Ten and the SEC, I think TCU has certainly benefited more than they've suffered from the transfer portal. Just look at the kid who will probably be starting the spring game at quarterback in Ken Seals, who's a transfer portal addition, who's been a huge part of TCU's spring ball with Josh Hoover sidelined.
All right. Well, let's keep it right there. Ken Seals played 27 games at Vandy, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks. Josh Hoover, I just found out here in the last couple of seconds, will not be playing in the spring game. So this is a quarterback competition that we expect to go deep into August.
No, Sonny Dykes has made it very clear that Josh Hoover is the starting quarterback for TCU come August of 2024. But they really haven't said exactly what's going on. We've heard a back injury. I don't know the significance of it, but Josh has been at practices. He's been around. He did not participate whatsoever, will not participate, but everyone is saying a full recovery in time for kind of summer workouts and fall camp for sure. So in targeting a backup quarterback with Chandler Morris having left for UNT, Sonny Dykes made it clear to potential transfers in that Josh Hoover was going to be the guy. They did not recruit out of the portal for competition. They recruited for depth. And so Ken Seals, who's a local kid who really, really wanted a TCU offer out of high school and did not get one, comes back home from Vanderbilt where he struggled, but you got to kind of let the stink of Vanderbilt football wash off a kid before you judge him too much. And I think what Sonny wanted was just a kid who had played at the highest level, who had seen the toughest competition, that could provide some steadiness and some leadership. And Ken Seals certainly does that. Great kid. We've heard nothing but incredible things about type of leader he is, type of person he is. He's also been an incredible mentor to potentially the future of TCU football, which is Haas Haney, a four-star recruit, a Elite 11 kid that comes out of Alito, just down the street from TCU. And he has been super, super impressive this spring. Again, not competing to be the starter, but based on what we're seeing and what we're hearing, I would be absolutely shocked if Haas wasn't taking meaningful snaps come fall in a package, kind of running some wildcat or some run pass option type stuff. The kid is electric with the ball in his hands, and he can spin it a little bit too. So he's really, really good. There's going to be a great quarterback competition between him and Hoover and hopefully Ty Hawkins in the near future. But right now, Josh Hoover is going to walk back in as a starting quarterback for TCU in August. But Ken Seals and Haas Haney have done a great job holding it down in the meantime.
So, Melissa, once we get past quarterback position, where do you think your eyes are going to be most directed throughout this spring game?
Well, it depends what you want me to watch for. Am I watching? Well, and let's be honest, as of right now, nobody will be watching because much like there's not a lot left over from the Gary Patterson regime. But one thing that Sonny Dykes has not said, but we've heard, is that this game will not be televised because they don't want people scouting their players for portal entries after the spring game. Is I don't know if that's true or not. That's just the rumor. But the areas that I'm interested to see how they perform. Wide receiver looks like it's going to be really, really deep, but we haven't seen much of the starters, let alone many of the scholarship players at all this spring because of injuries and maintenance. And just some of these guys are a little bit older, like JoJo Earl and Savion Williams. They don't need to practice that much. But I think that's an area I'm really excited. Dak Besh has been an absolute superstar. He's a kid who transferred out of LSU, who was super highly thought of, was their leading receiver as a freshman. Dealt with some injuries. The sophomore dealt with some injuries last year at TCU, but has been probably the best offensive skill player for TCU this spring. So hoping to see him get some meaningful snaps. Really interested to see how this remade offensive line looks. The running back position, Cam Cook is a second-year player. Him and Trey Sanders are kind of looking like the main guys back there. There's not a lot of experience. There's not a lot of collegiate snaps in that group. So seeing how they perform will be really interesting. We've heard great things out of Cook. He's a guy we all think is going to be really, really good, but can he be a bell cow in 2024 is a big question. And then defensively, this is a whole new look for TCU defensively with Andy Avalos as the new defensive coordinator. This is an aggressive, attacking, multiple defense that can show you a lot of different looks and is really going to try to get after the quarterback. We won't see that a lot on Saturday, obviously, in the spring game. But I want to see how the guys who kind of line up in that stud position that can kind of drop back into coverage, work in the running game, and then also rush the passer. There's a lot of depth at that position for TCU, and I want to see what those guys look like, or at least where they're coming from Saturday night.
So, Melissa, you've had to endure a long off season once or twice or many more times than that, and the big build up to another football season. And you know what it's like when you and other people that follow the team as closely as you do feel like, okay, we've got the players in place. This could be it. This could be a really good run. Let's stay healthy. Wow, I can't wait to see it. Or let's hope for the best. We think it could be a decent season, but this is probably cycling down and we probably are building up toward the next season after this one. Where would you place this program and this particular team as it stands right now?
It's so interesting because you have a Big 12 that's going to be without Texas and Oklahoma, that brings in a really good Utah team, and Oklahoma State brings back almost everybody. But there are so many question marks across this conference, especially at the quarterback position. And one thing we know in the Big 12, even though it's a much better defensive conference now than people give it credit for, you got to have a great quarterback to win. And I have no idea who the great quarterbacks are going to be in this league. I mean, you can look at Noah Fafita, you can look at Cameron Rising, you can look at Josh Hoover, you can look at, whatever 47-year-old guy Oklahoma State is rolling out this fall, Alan Bowman. I mean, how that guy is like signing his AARP checks and suiting up on Saturdays. It's amazing. Love that kid, by the way. He's amazing. Great guy. But I mean, there's so many opportunities for a team to rise up. And I think this year is so critical, not just in the first year of the Big 12, but with all of the talk of the next round of realignment. TCU really has to establish itself as a serious athletic university again, coming off of a season in 2023 where every program across that sport seemed to do nothing but win. And then this past season, we've seen every big program do nothing but not win enough. So I think football's really got to set the tone. It's important that this is a good season for TCU and for Sonny Dykes. What does a good season mean? In my eyes, I think anything over 8 wins would be considered a success. I'm kind of putting this team right now today at 7 or 8 wins is kind of what I think they should be doing based on their schedule, based on who they have in non-conference, and based on kind of where they're rebuilding. Josh Hoover can certainly elevate them to being competitive for a double-digit win season. And the offensive line is going to have a lot to say on that. The defense has got to be better. They can certainly not be worse than they were a year ago. So I think you could very well see TCU kind of right in that bowl eligibility line, or see them being really competitive and making a run towards Arlington in November. It's hard to say how that's going to play out, but I know for the Horned Frogs, both the fan base and the administration, getting to a bowl game is the absolute floor for the expectations. And I think that most people are hoping that TCU is right around that 8-win mark or more. It's going to be fascinating to see. I mean, you've got a quarterback with 6 career starts under his belt who missed the first spring of him being the guy. That could certainly set you back. But I think people have a lot of confidence in Josh Hoover. I think they're excited about Andy Avalos and what he's bringing to this defense. And, it's also going to be the first time that Josh Hoover has had the same offensive coordinator 2 years in a row, I think, in the last 5 years of his football career. So I wouldn't say expectations are high, but I think expectations are being set that last year was completely unacceptable, and it's got to be something better than that this fall.
Melissa, your mention of the schedule had me scrambling to pull up the schedule because I know I've looked at it a number of times, but it's been a few months and I'm looking at so many schedules, and it reminds me right out of the gate, boom, Friday night against Stanford. That reminds me of the, about 10 years ago now, Alamo Bowl game. Not quite 10 years ago, I don't think.
Yeah, that was in a
17?
2017, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
2017.
after the
Yeah.
Big 12 championship game
Yes.
team.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And the great comeback against Stanford. That was a fun game. And I was about to say UCF, a non-conference game. That's not a non-conference game, Mark.
Yeah,
SMU. Yeah, you got to get used
SMU, and
to.
then
Yes.
that football powerhouse, Long Island University, the Sharks coming to town. That was one that we all kind of were scratching our heads, and we realized Baylor played them last year too. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. You get to open up on a Friday night out in Stanford, out in Northern California, one of my absolute favorite football stadiums in the country. SMU, obviously, it's the last time these two programs are going to meet. I think 2024 is the last one. There might be one in 2025, but that rivalry is going on pause and going away potentially forever. But you're getting to play SMU, in an iron skillet game in their first year as an ACC member, which is kind of crazy. And then you get the body bag game hopefully in LIU. So Stanford is rebuilding in a massive way. So you got to anticipate TC will come out hopefully more ready to play than they did a year ago in their opener, and start off the season with the win. But the conference schedule is not easy, but it's favorable as far as the way that things are spaced out, and they do get to avoid some of the top teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how this season goes and what TCU can do, and if they can get off to a better start than they did a season ago.
And Melissa, I know we've got all summer to talk about this, but when I look at this Big 12 schedule, now TCU has been accustomed to playing either Texas or Texas Tech based on my recollection of the last week of the season, pretty much.
Pretty consistently, yeah.
Cincinnati. Okay.
Yeah.
And TCU's not the only one to draw some kind of wild card for the last week of the season. If you look at the entirety of the Big 12 schedule, it's almost like they just kind of threw teams in the air, and wherever they landed, like it's not the traditional, we're going to take a rivalry angle on the last weekend of the season.
Yeah, they did some partner schools, so that some of those rivalries will stay consistent. I think TCU will end up playing Baylor and Tech, if I remember correctly, pretty much every year. But I think that it was critical for them in the early goings in the first iteration of the schedule to make sure that every team played each other within the first, I think, 4 years of this new look Big 12. And I don't know that I agree that should have been the priority. But it's interesting to end at Cincinnati, to see Arizona on Black Friday. But you've still got that old school Southwest Conference gauntlet with Texas Tech at Baylor and then Oklahoma State coming to town. I'm really excited. I'll tell you one underrated game for people that maybe don't follow TCU as closely as I do. TCU plays at Kansas on September 28th. You think, oh, not a big deal, whatever, TCU at Kansas, except that game will be played at Arrowhead Stadium. And that is incredibly exciting. Anytime you can watch your team play in a pro venue, that's always fun and different. But getting to watch your team play in what is widely considered one of the best professional venues in sports, I'm really excited about that.
Dave Campbell, Texas football, Dave Campbell, college football. Tell the fine folks out there what's going on there.
Yeah, this is a great time of year to be following the Republic of Football Network, a podcast for every FBS football team in the state of Texas. Jamie Plunkett and I host Frogs Insider podcast. You can find podcasts for Baylor, Houston, Texas Tech, all kinds of crazy people doing shows there. And then, of course, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine is the summer must-have. So if you haven't subscribed and gotten your issue on order, make sure that you do that. Lots of great information coming out if you are interested in football in the state of Texas, whether that's at the high school or collegiate level.
And again, that's Frogs Insider. That comes out just about once a week.
Every week, yeah, usually on Tuesday mornings, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Just released an episode this morning or yesterday talking about spring game, basketball, women's basketball, lots of crazy women's basketball news around TCU too, which is really fun.
Good stuff. Melissa, thank you so much for setting us up for Saturday.
All right. Thanks, Mark, for having me on. Appreciate it.